Portions of this podcast use AI-generated voices and AI-assisted analysis for commentary and entertainment purposes.
Meta just ordered enough computing power from AMD to run multiple major cities.
Right.
I mean, 6 gigawatts. Let that sink in for a second.
It's a completely staggering number.
Today, we aren't just looking at a corporate earnings report. We are looking at really the blueprints for a massive physical terraforming of global infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a scale that basically forces you to rethink what a semiconductor company actually is.
Exactly.
We are moving from selling discrete components that just sit on a desk to deploying these civic scale utilities.
Welcome to this deep dive. You and I are putting on our financial analyst hats today to unpack AMD's Q1 2026 earnings report.
You've got a lot to cover.
We do. We've gone through the press release, the financial tables, the reconciliation metrics.
Yeah.
But our mission today isn't just to read you a spreadsheet. We want to interpret what these numbers actually mean in the physical world.
Right, because the numbers are just the proxy for the hardware.
Right. So we're going to decode the mechanics behind this 57% explosion in data center revenue. We'll figure out how buzzwords like agentic AI are altering server architecture and analyze the geopolitical race for sovereign AI.
Because when you read through these sources, the overarching narrative is just so clear.
Mm-hmm.
The experimental speculative phase of artificial intelligence, that's over.
It's done.
It's done. We're now firmly in the industrial deployment phase, and the capital required to build that out is just, it's staggering.
Let's start right there with the financial engine that's funding all of this.
Right.
So total revenue for Q1 2026 hit $10.3 billion.
Which is a 38% jump year over year.
Right, a huge jump. But when you dig into the profitability metrics, there was this massive delta that I really want to dissect for a minute.
The gap.
Yes, the gap. So net income on a GAAP basis was $1.38 billion. But then on a non-GAAP basis, it jumps to nearly $2.3 billion. I mean, that's a nearly billion-dollar gap.
It's huge. And that difference between GAAP and non-GAAP is crucial when you're evaluating a company in this kind of hyper-growth infrastructure building phase.
Because GAAP is basically like the strict, unforgiving IRS tax return. Right?
Exactly. GAAP standard accounting principles, it requires companies to record these historical acquisition costs and non-cash expenses in ways that can actually obscure the present-day performance of the core business.
Right. So non-GAAP is sort of the company taking off its tie and saying, look, if you remove these one-time costs, here is the actual cash-generating health of our operations.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And specifically here, GAAP requires AMD to include the amortization of acquisition-related intangibles.
Which weighed down their operating income by over $550 million this quarter alone.
Right, over $500 million. But instead of just viewing that as an accounting quirk, doesn't that $500 million charge actually signal something, aggressive about their strategy?
Oh, it absolutely does. That amortization is the financial echo of AMD basically swallowing other companies in intellectual property.
To build out their stack.
Right, to rapidly build out their AI software and hardware stack.
Right.
I mean, they didn't just organically grow every piece of technology they needed. They bought their way into strategic positions over the last few years.
Which is expensive up front.
Very.
Yeah.
But when you strip away those historical paper-based acquisition costs, which is exactly what the non-GAAP metric does, you get a much clearer picture of the living, breathing cash engine of their daily operations today.
And man, that cash engine generated a record quarterly free cash flow of $2.56 billion.
Yeah.
That is a 25% margin on their revenue.
It's incredible.
It really is. For every dollar coming in the door, 25 cents is pure, unencumbered cash.
But I have to ask you, given the sheer capital intensity of the AI arms race, is $2.56 billion in free cash flow actually enough to secure the supply chains they need?
Well, it's less about the absolute number and more about the leverage it represents.
Okay, how so? So in the semiconductor industry, if you want to compete at this level, you're booking manufacturing capacity at fabrication plants years in advance.
Right.
You're securing raw materials, packaging facilities, testing centers. Having a 25% free cash flow margin proves AMD can internally fund this massive infrastructure build-out without taking on crippling debt.
Or diluting their shareholders.
Exactly. They are generating massive cash exactly because their most profitable high-margin products are the ones experiencing the highest demand right now.
Which brings us directly to the heavyweight champion of this report,
The data center.
the data center segment. I mean, this is the hardware actually running the AI models. Data center revenue hit $5.8 billion.
Up 57% year over year.
57%. That's wild.
It really is the gravitational center of the entire company right now.
Yeah. And the report attributes this to strong demand for their EPYC processors and the ramping up of Instinct GPU shipments. But, the language used by CEO Lisa Su really caught my attention here. She explicitly cited two things: inferencing and agentic AI as the forces driving this specific demand.
Right, agentic AI.
Now, I think we all understand that basic generative AI requires compute. You type a prompt, you get a response. But how does this shift to agentic AI fundamentally alter the mechanical demand on these data centers?
Oh, it changes the entire thermal and computational profile of the server.
Okay, walk me through that.
So think about standard generative AI as a reactive burst. A user asks a question, the server spikes for a second to calculate the answer, sends it back, and then it basically goes idle.
Right, it's bursty traffic.
Exactly. Agentic AI, however, is proactive and continuous.
Meaning the AI is operating without constant human prompting.
Precisely. If you deploy an AI agent to, say, optimize a global supply chain, it isn't just sitting there waiting for you to ask it a question.
Right, it's doing it on its own.
Right. It is constantly querying databases, running predictive models, evaluating its own outputs, and executing trades or orders in the background. It's running complex, multi-step problem-solving loops 204/7.
So the utilization rate of the hardware just stays pinned at maximum.
Yes. A single initial request to an agentic AI might trigger tens of thousands of continuous inference operations in the background over the next week.
Wow.
And that requires a fundamental shift in data center architecture. You can't rely on general-purpose servers anymore.
No.
You need incredibly dense racks of specialized accelerators, like the Instinct GPU line, paired with high-performance EPYC CPUs just to handle the traffic direction. The sheer volume of concurrent, continuous inferencing tasks just skyrockets.
And that continuous utilization explains why the power requirements are getting so extreme.
Absolutely.
Which leads us perfectly to the partnerships section of this report, and specifically that 6 gigawatt number from Meta that we mentioned at the start.
Yeah, that's the big one.
They plan to deploy up to 6 gigawatts of AMD Instinct GPUs, starting with a 1 gigawatt deployment powered by a custom MI450-based GPU. Now, I have to push back on this a little bit,
Sure.
because to put that in perspective for you listening, 6 gigawatts is roughly the output of 3 Hoover dams.
It's massive.
Right. So given the current constraints on global power grids, is that even physically deployable in the near term, or is Meta just securing a place in line on paper?
It's a very valid skepticism, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot just plug a 1 gigawatt data center into the existing municipal grid.
But local infrastructure would literally melt.
It would. These deployments require essentially co-locating data centers right next to dedicated power plants.
Like nuclear or massive solar farm.
Whether that's nuclear or massive renewable arrays with battery storage. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when Meta commits to a 6 gigawatt pipeline, you are looking at a multi-year phased deployment that is inextricably tied to physical energy construction.
So they are essentially telling AMD, look, as fast as we can secure the power, we will buy the chips to fill the room.
Exactly. And Meta isn't just buying off-the-shelf parts here. They are acting as the lead customer for the upcoming 6th-gen EPYC CPUs, codenamed Venice and Verano, and utilizing custom MI450-based GPUs.
So they're customizing it.
Yeah, they are co-designing the silicon to perfectly match their specific agentic AI workloads. And while Meta's scale is totally staggering, the cloud providers are doing the exact same thing.
Right. AWS, Google Cloud.
Microsoft Azure, Tencent, they were all rapidly expanding their 5th-gen EPYC-powered instances.
But pouring the concrete and generating the power is really only half the physical challenge here.
Oh, yeah.
Because the sources outline another massive bottleneck, which brings us to arguably the most strategic deployment in this entire report, the partnership with Samsung.
Yes, the memory bottleneck.
Right. They're collaborating on next-generation AI memory, specifically securing HBM4 supply for AMD's Instinct MI455X GPUs. Now, why is memory suddenly an earnings report level focus? Are we hitting a physical wall with compute?
We are absolutely hitting a physical wall, and it's known as the von Neumann bottleneck.
Okay, what is that?
So in these massive AI clusters, the compute engine is mind-bogglingly fast. but it spends a significant portion of its time just sitting idle, waiting for data to arrive from the memory chips.
Oh, wow. So the processor is basically starved for fuel.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
If the processor is a massive high-performance engine, the memory bandwidth is the fuel line.
Right.
And standard memory technologies simply cannot push data fast enough to keep these new agentic AI models fed. High bandwidth memory, or HBM, solves this physically by stacking memory silicon dies on top of each other.
Like a skyscraper.
Like a skyscraper, incredibly close to the processor, and connecting them with thousands of microscopic vertical wires called through-silicon vias.
So you are basically physically widening the highway and shortening the commute for the data.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But manufacturing those microscopic 3D stacked silicon structures is incredibly difficult.
I can imagine.
The defect rates can be high, and the thermal challenges of stacking hot silicon are just immense. HBM4 is the next quantum leap in this technology, and right now, across the entire global industry, HBM fabrication capacity is the ultimate choke point.
Got it. So if you don't have the memory, you literally can't ship the GPU.
Which is why this Samsung collaboration is so critical. AMD is locking down the fuel lines.
Smart.
Yeah, by securing a strategic partnership for HBM4, they are ensuring that when customers like Azure or Meta demand tens of thousands of MI455X GPUs, AMD actually has the constrained, bleeding-edge memory required to build them. It's a massive competitive moat.
It's fascinating how the constraints shift over time.
Right.
It goes from compute limits to power grid limits to microscopic memory fabrication limits.
Yep.
And while Silicon Valley giants are buying up this hardware, our sources highlight a totally different kind of customer emerging.
This is really interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about the geopolitics of compute. The report details several major international collaborations aimed at advancing sovereign AI.
This is perhaps the most significant long-term trend in the report. We are seeing the rise of the nation-state as an enterprise customer.
The specifics here are just fascinating. So AMD is co-developing Helios-based rack-scale AI infrastructure with Tata Consultancy Services to accelerate sovereign AI in India.
Thank you.
They are working with Naver Cloud and Upstage in Korea. They've also joined Open Telco AI, which is an initiative to train telco-grade models using AMD Instinct GPUs.
Yeah.
Now, for a listener tracking the global tech landscape, why the sudden urgency for sovereign AI? Like, why doesn't a nation like India just rent compute from AWS or Google Cloud like a regular company?
Because AI is no longer viewed simply as software.
Yeah.
It is now classified as critical national infrastructure.
Ah, okay.
Think about it. When an AI model is processing a nation's healthcare records, its legal precedents, its power grid telemetry, and its government communications, that data is a matter of national security. Renting compute from a foreign cloud provider usually means routing that sensitive data through servers subject to foreign jurisdictions and corporate data policies.
That makes total sense. No sovereign nation wants their core infrastructure dependent on a server farm in another country, governed by laws they don't control.
Exactly. So sovereign AI is the push to physically localize the hardware, the data, and the models within a country's own borders.
Right.
But it's also about cultural preservation. A nation wants an AI model natively trained on Hindi or Korean using local cultural context, rather than relying on a Western model that simply translates English concepts into other languages.
Okay, but building a state-of-the-art AI data center isn't like building a regular server room.
Not at all.
How does a country actually stand one up from scratch? I assume that's where this Helios-based architecture comes in.
That is the key mechanism.
What?
Sovereign entities generally do not have armies of hardware engineers ready to design custom AI server architectures.
Right, they're governments, not tech firms.
Exactly. They don't just want to buy a box of chips. They need a proven, pre-integrated blueprint. Helios is AMD's rack-scale architecture. It defines exactly how to network the CPUs, the GPUs, the memory, and the networking switches together at scale.
So it's an instruction manual.
A very advanced one, yeah. By partnering with local integrators like TCS in India, AMD provides the schematic and the hardware, and the local partner builds it out. They're essentially exporting data centers in a box.
And the mention of Open Telco AI is interesting context there, too, because telecommunications companies own the physical data pipes of a nation.
Exactly.
If you want to deploy sovereign AI, partnering with the national telcos to run the infrastructure makes perfect sense.
It creates a completely closed, secure loop for national data.
Okay, we spent a lot of time on gigawatt data centers and nation-state computing, which makes sense given the 57% growth.
Oh, absolutely.
But AMD has an entirely different side of the house. We need to look at the client and gaming segments because the numbers there tell a story about how this entire ecosystem actually survives.
You really can't look at the data center in a vacuum.
No. So looking at the segment summary, client and gaming revenue was $3.6 billion, up 23% year over year.
Right.
The client business specifically was up 26%, heavily driven by Ryzen processors. They highlighted the new Ryzen AI PRO 400 series processors, which deliver Copilot Plus experiences for enterprise PCs.
Yeah.
Even the embedded segment, things like FPGAs for industrial applications, held steady at $873 million. Now, in any other era, a $3.6 billion segment growing at 23% would be the headline.
Oh, for sure. It would be front page news.
Right. So why is it so crucial that this legacy business stays strong while the data center booms?
Because it acts as the pressure release valve for the very problem we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Continuous agentic AI compute.
Okay, how so?
Well, if every single AI request, every background task, every email drafted, every single data point analyzed has to be sent to a 6-gigawatt data center to be processed, the global network latency and power grid demands become completely unsustainable.
The physical infrastructure would just collapse under the load.
Yes. The only way the ecosystem scales is if you push a massive amount of that inferencing workload to the edge.
Oh, to the user's actual laptop or desktop?
Exactly. And that is what the Ryzen AI PRO 400 series represents. It integrates neural processing units, or NPUs, directly into the personal computer.
Oh, I see.
By processing the lighter, continuous AI tasks locally on the machine, you drastically reduce the strain on the cloud. The 26% growth in the client segment shows that enterprises are actively upgrading their fleets to these AI-capable machines.
They're preparing for it.
Right. It proves the market is adopting a hybrid AI model. Heavy lifting in the data center, continuous daily tasks at the edge.
That fundamentally changes how we view that $3.6 billion segment. It's not just some legacy cash cow. It's a necessary structural component of the global AI rollout.
It absolutely is.
Which brings us to the forward outlook. How does AMD view the next quarter?
They're optimistic.
Yeah, for Q2 2026, they are projecting revenue of roughly $11.2 billion. That would represent a 46% year-over-year growth.
Huge.
And they expect a non-GAAP gross margin of about 56%. But the phrase from Lisa Su that really anchors this report for me is her note about a growing pipeline of large-scale deployments, providing increasing visibility into their trajectory.
Yeah, that word visibility. In the context of semiconductor manufacturing, increasing visibility is basically the most reassuring phrase an analyst can read.
Because hardware is traditionally so cyclical, right? You forecast demand, you fabricate millions of chips, and if the market shifts, you're left holding massive, depreciating inventory.
The boom and bust cycle has defined this industry for decades. I mean, historically, you rarely had visibility beyond the next 6 to 9 months.
Right.
But the nature of these AI deployments has completely changed the time horizon. As we discussed with Meta's 6-gigawatt plan or the sovereign AI rollouts, these are multi-year physical construction projects.
Yeah, pouring concrete.
Exactly. When a customer is pouring foundation and building power substations, they lock in their silicon orders years in advance.
Right. They can't afford to finish the building and find out there are no chips available to put in it.
Exactly. So AMD has these non-cancelable purchase orders and strategic commitments stretching far into the future. That visibility means their massive upfront R&D investments like securing HBM4 from Samsung or designing custom silicon are highly de-risked.
Because they know the buyers are already lined up.
They know the revenue is waiting at the end of the manufacturing line.
Incredible. Let's synthesize what we've unpacked today. We started by looking at a $10.3 billion top line, driven by a data center segment that is up 57%.
Yep.
We explored how the shift from bursty reactive AI to continuous agentic AI is altering server architecture and demanding just unprecedented utilization rates.
And we analyzed the physical realities of scaling that compute, from navigating multi-gigawatt power constraints to securing the critical HBM4 memory bottleneck with Samsung.
We tracked the geopolitical shift as nations invest in sovereign AI, using Helios rack-scale blueprints to protect their data. And we saw how the 26% growth in client PCs is actually a necessary pressure release valve, pushing inference to the edge to keep the cloud from buckling.
Right. All of which culminates in a company with $2.56 billion in quarterly free cash flow and unprecedented visibility into their future revenue pipeline. The infrastructure phase is officially underway.
It's a staggering transformation, and it leaves me with one lingering thought for you to consider as we wrap up.
Let's hear it.
We spent a lot of time talking about the sheer physical constraints of this technology, the thermal limits of memory, the manufacturing bottlenecks, the multi-year timelines. But when a single company is planning a 6 gigawatt GPU deployment, it begs a bigger question about our global energy markets.
The power grid.
Yeah. How will our legacy power grids adapt to feed this insatiable new era of continuous intelligent computing? Because you can design the most advanced silicon on Earth and you can secure all the high bandwidth memory from Samsung, but if you can't physically plug the data center in, it's just very expensive sand.
That's a great point.
It is the ultimate physical bottleneck, and it's something you definitely need to keep an eye on as these technologies scale over the coming years. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into AMD's Q1 2026 earnings. Keep questioning the physical mechanics behind the financial headlines, and we'll catch you next time.